Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I am back with some more ancient lore. Today we are going to be diving back into Dante Alighieri's Inferno. We are on Canto 15. We will be doing Canto 15 through 24. We will read through and discuss on the other side. In part, this is vocal therapy, so if my voice going in and out, changing pitch and tone is too much for you, I understand. Let's dig in and see what's up. Oh, you can also start at the beginning. We do have the links provided in the corner. Let's dive into Canto 15, Inferno. O Simon Magus, O forlorn disciples, ye who the things of God which ought to be, the brides of holiness, rapaciously for silver and for gold do prostitute. Now it behooves for you the trumpet sound, because in this third Bolgia ye abide. We had already on the following tomb ascended to that portion of the crag which o'er the middle of the moat hangs plumb. Wisdom supreme, O how great art thou, showest in heaven and earth and in the evil world, and with what justice doth thy power distribute. I saw upon the sides and on the bottom the livid stone with perforations filled, all of one size, and every one was round. To me, less ample seemed they not, nor greater than those in my beautiful St. John, are fashioned for the place of the baptizers, and one of which, not many years ago, I broke for someone who was drowning in it. Be this a seal, all men, to undeceive. Out of the mouth of each one there protruded the feet of a transgressor, and the legs up to the calf, the rest within remained. In all of them were the souls, were both on fire, wherefore the joints so violently quivered they would have snapped asunder withes and bands, even as the flame of unctuous things is wont, to move upon the outer surface only, so likewise was it there from heel to point. Master, who is that one who writhes himself more than his other comrades quivering? I said, and whom a redder flame is sucking. And he to me, if thou wilt have me bear thee down there along the bank that which lowest lies, from him thou'll know his errors and himself. And I, what pleases thee to me is pleasing. Thou art my Lord, and knowest that I depart not from thy desire, and knowest what is spoken. Straightway upon the fourth dyke we arrived. We turned, and on the left-hand side descended, down to the bottom, full of holes and narrow. And the good master yet from off his haunch deposed me not, till to the hole he brought me of him who so lamented with his shanks. Whoever thou art that standest upside down, O doleful soul, implanted like a stake, to say, began I, if thou canst, speak out. I stood even as the friar who is confessing, the false assassin, who, when he is fixed, recalls him, so that death may be delayed. And he cried out, Dost thou stand there already? Dost thou stand there already, Boniface? Boniface? By many years the record lied to me. Art thou so early satiate with that wealth for which thou didst not fear to take by fraud the beautiful lady and then work her woe? Such I became as people are who stand, not comprehending what is answered them, as if bemocked, and know not how to answer. Then said Virgilius, Say to him straightway, I am not he thou thinkest. And I replied as was imposed on me, whereat the spirit writhed with both his feet, then, sighing with a voice of lamentation, said to me, Then what wantest thou of me? If who I am thou carest so much to know, that thou on that account hast crossed the bank, know that I vested was with the great mantle, and truly was I son of the she-bear, so eager to advance the cubs that wealth above, and here myself I pocketed. Beneath my head the others are dragged down, who have preceded me in simony, flattened along the fissure of the rock. Below there I shall likewise fall, whenever that one shall come who I believed thou wast. What time? The sudden question I proposed. But longer I, my feet already toast, and here have been in this way upside down, than he will planted stay with reddened feet. For after him shall come a fouler deed, from towards the west a pastor, without law, such as befits to cover him and me. New Jason will he be, of whom we read in Maccabees, and his king was pliant, so he who governs France shall be to this one. I do not know if I were here too bold, that I answered only in this metre. I pray thee, tell me now how great a treasure our Lord demanded of St. Peter first, before he put the keys into his keeping. Truly he nothing but asked, but follow me. Nor Peter, nor the rest asked of Matthias silver or gold when he by lot was chosen unto the place the guilty soul had lost. Therefore stay here, for thou art justly punished, and keep safeguard over the ill-gotten money, which caused thee to be valiant against Charles. And were it not that still forbids it me, the reverence for the keys superlative thou hadst in keeping in the gladsome life, I would make use of words more grievous still, because your avarice afflicts the world, trampling the good and lifting the depraved. The evangelist you pastors had in mind, when she who sitteth upon many waters, to fornicate with kings by him was seen. The same who with the 7 heads was born, and power and strength from the 10 horns received, so long as virtue to her spouse was pleasing. Ye have made yourselves a god of gold and silver, and from the idolater how differ ye, save that he one and ye 100 worship? Ah, Constantine, of how much ill was mother, not thy conversion, but that marriage dower, which the first wealthy father took from thee. And while I sang to him such notes as these, either that anger or that conscience stung him. He struggled violently with both his feet. I think in sooth that it my leader pleased, with such contented lip he listened ever unto the sound of the true words expressed. Therefore with both his arms he took me up, and when he had me all upon his breast, remounted by the way where he descended. Nor did he tire to have me clasped to him, but bore me to the summit of the ark, which from the 4th dyke to the 5th is passage. There, tenderly, he laid his burden down, tenderly on the crag uneven and steep, that would have been hard passage for the goats. Thence was unveiled to me another valley. And so ends. What was that? This is 20. Is this 20? So that was 19. Yeah. Okay. So ends 19. And again, we get a look into how people, like how Dante in particular, was judging the people in his history and the people that were in his current times, right? This is definitely him casting judgment upon both the long dead and the recent dead in what he conceived to be hell. I've said before, and I will say it again, I don't hold the same beliefs as this. I am far removed from what Catholicism believes in general, but this in specificity, because this isn't even like the Catholic believings, right? This is just a man writing down something. Now, it was Catholic propaganda because he was doing it in service of the Catholic Church. This was to keep people scared. But this isn't biblical. Like, none of this is in the actual Bible, even in the removed parts, right? Even in the parts that they don't let you look at, Joshua and Thomas and, Enoch and all the parts that were pulled out. They don't let you see those parts, but even this isn't in that. The best that you can infer is a separation from God into a land of the dead, or a separation from the living into a land of the dead, because the Hebrews did not have the concept of hell. That they did not have our concept of heaven. And it just wasn't part of what they did. It wasn't part of their belief system. Even in the time of Jesus, hell was a relatively new concept. The eternal fires and damnation, that was all brand new things. And then if you don't know what I'm talking about, you should definitely check out the Bible study. Canto 20. Of a new pain behooves me to make verses, and give material to the 20th canto of the first song, which is of the submerged. I was already thoroughly disposed to peer down into the uncovered depth, which bathed itself with tears of agony. And people saw I through the circular valley, silent and weeping, coming at the pace which in this world the litanies assume. And lower down my sight descended on them. Wondrously each one seemed to be distorted from chin to the beginning of the chest, for towards the reins the countenance was turned, and backwards it behooved them to advance, as to look forward had been taken from them. Perchance, indeed, by violence of palsy, someone had been thus wholly turned awry, but I never saw it nor believe it can be. As God may let thee, reader, gather fruit from this thy reading, think now for thyself, how could I ever keep my face unmoistened, when our own image near me I beheld, distorted so, the weeping of the eyes along the fissure bathed the hinder parts. Truly I wept, leaning upon a peak of the hard crag, so that my escort said to me, Art thou, too, of the other fools? Here pity lives when it is wholly dead. Who is the greater reprobate than he who feels compassion at the doom divine? Lift up thy head, and see for whom open the eyes before the Thebians' eyes. Open the earth before the Thebans' eyes. Wherefore they all cried, Whither rushest thou, Amphiaraus? Why dost thou leave the war? And downward ceased he not to fall amain as far as Minos lays hold on all. See, he has made a bosom of his shoulders, because he wished to see too far before him. Behind he looks, and backward goes his way. Behold, Tiresias, whose semblance changed, when from a male a female he became, his members being all of them transformed, and afterwards was forced to strike once more two entangled serpents with his rod, ere he could again have his manly plumes. That Aruns is, who backs the other's belly, who in the hills of Luni, where the grubs, the Carorisi, whose house is underneath, among the marbles white, a cavern had for his abode, whence to behold the stars and sea. The view was not cut off from him. And she there, who is covering up her breast, which thou beholdest not, with loosened tresses, and on that side has all the hairy skin, was Manto, who made quest through many lands. Afterwards tarried there where I was born, whereof I would thou list to me a little. And after her father had from life departed, and the city of Bacchus had become enslaved, she a long season wandered through the world. Above in beauteous Italy lies a lake, at the Alps' foot, that shuts in Germany over Tyrol, and has the name Benico. By 1,000 springs, I think, and more is bathed twixt Garda and Valcamonica, Benino, with water that grows stagnant in that lake. Midway, a place is where the Tridentine pastor, and he of Brescia and the Veronese might give his blessing if he passed that way. Sitteth Pusteria, fortress fair and strong, to front the Brescians and the Bergamisks, where round about the bank descendeth lowest. There, of necessity, must fall whatever in the bosom of Benico cannot stay, and grows a river through verdant pastures. Soon as the water doth begin to run, no more Benico is it called, but Mencio, Fares Governo, where it falls in Po. Not far it runs before it finds a plain, in which it spreads itself and makes it marshy, and oft is wont in summer to be sickly. Passing that way, the virgin, pitiless, land in the middle of the fen descried, untilled and naked of inhabitants. There, to escape all human intercourse, she with her servants stayed, her arts to practice, and lived, and left her empty body there. The men, thereafter, who were scattered around, collected in that place, which was made strong by the lagoon it had on every side. They built their city over those dead bones, and after her who first the place selected, Mantua named it, without other omen. Its people once within more crowded were. Here the stupidity of Casalodi from Penemonte had received a seat. Therefore I caution thee, if ever thou hearest, originate my city otherwise, no falsehood may the verity defraud. And I, my master, thy discourses are to me so certain, and so take my faith, that unto me the rest would be spent coals. But tell me of the people who are passing, if any one noteworthy thou beholdest, for only unto that my mind reverts. And then he said to me, he who from the cheek thrust out his beard upon his swarthy shoulders, was at the time when Greece was void of males, so that there scarce remained one in the cradle, an augur, and with Calchas gave the moment, in Aulus, when to sever the first cable. Eriphilius was his name was, and so sings my lofty tragedy in some part or another, that knowest thou well who knowest the whole of it. The next, who is so slender in the flanks, was Michael Scott, who of a variety of magical illusions knew the game. Behold, Guido Bonatti, behold Astinte, who now unto his leather and his thread would fain have struck, but he too late repents. Behold the wretched ones who left the needle, the spool and rock, and made them fortune tellers. They wrought their magic spells with herb and image. But come now, for already holds the confines of both the hemispheres, and under Seville touches the ocean wave, Cain, and the thorns. And yesternight the moon was round already. Thou shouldst remember well it did not harm thee from time to time within the forest deep. Thus spake he to me, and we walked the while. And so ends Canto 20. And again, this is a history lesson more than a theology lesson, right? This is him expressing these people who did these sins, but for the most part, it is him talking about what he believes that these people are guilty of. There's some things in here that I am entirely unfamiliar with, right? This legend, I don't believe I've ever heard it before. I would like to know more about it, and so it's a good place to start off on thinking about other things and finding other things, and I will be coming back for that. I'm going to finish this whole thing before I start trying to do things like that. But if you want to make comments down below as to what we should be looking for out of these, I would much appreciate it. I would like to be able to go back and dig into these ancient lores and find out some more ancient lore. Let's dig into Canto 21. From bridge to bridge thus, speaking other things, of which my comedy cares not to sing, we came along and held the summit, when we halted to behold another fissure of Malibouget and other vain laments, and I beheld it marvellously dark, as in the arsenal of the Venetians boils in the winter the tenacious pitch, to smear their unsound vessels over again. For sail they cannot, and instead thereof one makes his vessel new, and one recalks the ribs of that which many a voyage has made. One hammers at the prow and one at the stern. This one makes the oars, and that one cordage twist. Another mends the mainsail and the mizzen. Thus, not by fire, but by the art divine, was boiling down below there a dense pitch, which upon every side the bank belimed. I saw it, but I did not see within it aught but the bubbles that the boiling raised, and all swell up and re-subside compressed. The while below there fixedly I gazed my leader,
crying out, "Beware! Beware!" drew me unto himself from where I stood. Then I turned around as one who is impatient to see what it behooves him to escape, and whom a sudden terror doth unman, who, while he looks, delays not his departure, and I beheld upon behind us a black devil, running along upon the crag, approach. Ah, how ferocious was he in his aspect, and how he seemed to me in action ruthless, his with open wings, and light upon his feet. His shoulders, which sharp pointed were and high, a sinner did encumber with both haunches, and he held clutched the sinews of the feet. From off our bridge he said, O Malebranche, behold, one of the elders of Saint Zita, plunge him beneath, for I return for others. Unto that town which is furnished with them, all there are baritors, except Bontoro, no into yes for money there is changed. He hurled him down and over the hard crag, turned round, and never was a mastiff loosed in so much hurry to pursue a thief. The other sank and rose again, face downward, but the demons, under the cover of the bridge, cried, Here the Santo Volto has no place. Here swims one otherwise than in the Soricchio. Therefore, if for our gaffs thou wishest not, do not uplift thyself above the pitch. They seized him then with more than 100 rakes. They said, It here behooves thee to dance covered, that if thou canst, thou secretly mayest pilfer. Not otherwise the cooks their scullions make, immerse into the middle of the cauldron the meat with hooks, so that it may not float. Said the good master to me, that it be not apparent thou art here, crouch thyself down behind a jag, that thou mayest have some screen. And for no outrage that is done to me, be thou afraid, because these things I know, for once before was I in such a scuffle. Then he passed on beyond the bridge's head, and as upon the 6th bank he arrived, need was for him to have a steadfast front, with the same fury and the same uproar, as dogs leap about upon a mendicant, who on a sudden begs wherever he stops. They issued from beneath the little bridge, and turned against him all their grappling irons. But he cried out, Be none of you malignant. Before those hooks of yours lay hold of me, let one of you step forward, who may hear me, and then take counsel as to grappling me. They all cried out, Let Malacota go, whereat one started, and the rest stood still. And he came to him, saying, What avails it? Thinkest thou, Malacota, to behold me advanced into this place, my master said, safe hitherto from all your skill of fence, without the will divine and fate auspicious? Let me go on, for it in heaven is willed that I another show this savage road. Then was his arrogance so humbled in him that he let fall his grapnel at his feet, and to the others he said, Now strike him not. And unto me my guide, O thou who sittest among the splinters of the bridge, crouch down, securely now return to me again. Wherefore I started and came swiftly to him, and all the devils forward thrust themselves, so that I feared they would not keep their compact. And thus beheld I once afraid the soldiers who issued under safeguard from Caprona, seeing themselves among so many foes. Close did I press myself with all my persons, beside my leader, and turned not my eyes from their countenance, which was not good. They lowered their rakes, and Wilt thou have me hit him? They said to one another, On the rump, and answered, Yes, see that thou nick him with it. But the same demon who was holding parley with my conductor turned him very quickly, and said, be quiet, Scarmiglione. Then said to us, You can no farther go forward upon this crag, because is lying all shattered at the bottom, the 6th arch. And if still thou doth please you to go onward, pursue your way along upon this rock. Near is another crag that yields a path. Yesterday, 5 hours later than this hour, 1,266 years were complete. That here the way was broken. I send in that direction some of mine to see if any one doth err himself. Go ye with them, for they will not be vicious. Step forward, Alicinio and Calabria. Then began he to cry out, and thou, Cagnazzo, and Barbaraccia, do thou guide the 10. Come forward, Libiscoco, and Draganazo, and Tust Siriato, and Graffiacani, and Farafello, and Mad Rubiacante. Search ye around about the boiling pitch. Let these be safe as far as the next crag, that all unbroken passes over the den. Oh me, what is it, master, that I see? Pray, let us go, I said, without an escort, if thou knowest how, since for myself I ask none. If thou art observant, as thou wont is, dost thou not see that they do gnash their teeth, and with their brows are threatening woe to us? And he to me, I will not have thee fear. Let them gnash on according to their fancy, because they do it for those boiling wretches. Along the left-hand dike they wheeled about, but first had each one thrust his tongue between his teeth towards their leader for a signal, and he had made a trumpet of his rump. That's an interesting way to end 21. And again, this is the imaginings, and it's interesting to note here that hell is broken, apparently. Part of it broke off. Now, the exact dating of Inferno is not precise. It is sometime between 1300 and 1327. It began, I believe, in 1302 or 1303. I would have to go back and look it up, but it was slightly after 1300, and it was done by 1327, but there was a 20-year gap in the middle. We get an exact date for the breaking of hell inside of this canto, and that's an interesting thing. It was also, let me see if I can find it again. It's like 1200 years, right? Which would put it about 100 years after the death of Christ, and not necessarily, I don't know that I'm going to be able to find it again without stopping and looking, but it's one of those things that I'm definitely going to come back and investigate further, because there is a theory that about 80 years after the death of Christ, the revelation was fulfilled. And that would put that at about the same time as this, right? That they're looking back at roughly the same time period. Now, again, precision is not going to be possible there, but it is an interesting mind game to look at. It's interesting that hell is broken, right? He broke one of the arches of hell. And it wasn't Jesus, right? That would have been 1300 years ago, not 1200. So that's interesting. And maybe it is implying that it's Jesus, but it seems like the timing's a little bit off for that. Regardless, Inferno, Canto 22. I have erewhile seen horsemen moving camp, beginning the storming and their muster make, and sometimes starting off for their escape. Valiant couriers have I seen upon your land, O Arantines, and foragers go forth, tournaments stricken, and the joustings run, sometimes with trumpets, and sometimes with bells, with kettledrums, and signals of the castles, and with our own, and with outlandish things, but never yet with bagpipes so uncouth that I see horsemen move, nor infantry, nor ship by any sign of land or star. We went upon our way with the 10 demons, a savage company, but in the church with saints, and in the tavern with the gluttons. Ever upon the pitch was my intent to see the whole condition of that Baltia, and of the people who therein were burned, even as the dolphins when they make a sign to to mariners by arching their back. Dolphin was a different thing. They that should counsel take to save their vessels. Thus, sometimes, to alleviate his pain, one of the sinners would display his back, and in less time conceal it than it lightens. As on the brink of water in a ditch, the frogs stand only with their muzzles out, so that they hide their feet and other bulk. So upon every side the sinners stood, but ever as Barbaraccia came near them, they thus underneath the boiling they withdrew. I saw, and still my heart doth shudder at it, one waiting thus Even as it comes to pass, one frog remains, and down another dives. And Graphiacan, who most confronted him, grappled him by his tresses smeared with pitch, and drew him up, so that he seemed an otter. I knew before the names of all of them, so I had noted them when they were chosen, and when they called each other, listened how. O Rubicante, see that thou do lay thy claws upon him, so that thou mayst flay him, cried all together the accursed ones. And I, my master, see to it if thou canst, that thou mayst know who is the luckless wight, thus comes in his adversary's hands. Near to the side of him my leader drew, asked of him whence he was, and he replied, I in the kingdom of Navarre was born. My mother placed me servant to a lord, for she had borne me to a ribald knave, destroyer of himself and of his things. Then I, domestic, was of good King Tybalt. I set me there to practice barratry, for which I pay the reckoning in this heat. And Ciriato, from whose mouth projected on either side a tusk, as in a boar, caused him to feel how one of them could rip. Among malicious cats the mouse had come, but Barbarossa clasped him in his arms and said, Stand ye aside while I enfork him. And to my master he turned round his head. Ask him again, he said, if more thou wish, to know from him before some one destroy him. The guide. Now, tell then of the other culprits. Knowest thou any one who is a Latian, under the pitch, and he? I separated lately from one who was a neighbor to it. Would that I still were covered up with him, for I should fear not either claw nor hook. And Limbia Coco we have borne too much, and with his grapnel seized him by the arm, so that by rending he tore off a tendon. Ic Dragahizenazo wished to pounce upon him, down at the legs, whence their decurion turned around and around about with an evil look. When they again somewhat were pacified of him, who still was looking at his wound, demanded my conductor without stay, Who is that one from whom a luckless parting thou sayest thou hast made to come ashore? And he replied, It was the friar Gomita, he of Galora, vessel of all fraud, who had the enemies of his lord in hand, and dealt so with them, each exults thereat. Money he took and let them smoothly off, he says, and in other offices a barrator was he, not mean, but sovereign, for gathers with him one Don Miguel Zanche, of Logodoro and of Sardinia. To gossip never do their tongues feel tired. Oh me, see that one, how he grinds his teeth? Still further would I speak, but am afraid, lest he to scratch my itch be making ready. And the grand provost turned to Farfello, who rolled his eyes as if about to strike, said, Stand aside there, thou malicious bird, if you desire either to see or hear. The terror-stricken recommend thereon Tuscans or Lombards, I will make them come. But let the Malebranche cease a little, so that these may not their revenges fear, and I, sitting down in this very place, for one that I am, will make 7 come, when I shall whistle, as our custom is, to do whenever one of us comes out. Cagnazzo, at these words, his muzzle lifted, shaking his head, and said, Just hear the trick which he has thought of, down to throw himself, whence he, who snares in great abundance had, responded, I, by far, too cunning am, when I procure for mine a greater sadness. Alishin held not in, but running counter unto the rest, said to him, If thou dive, I will not follow thee upon the gallop, but I will beat my wings above the pitch, the height be left, and the bank be the bank a shield, to see if thou alone dost countervail us. O thou who readest, thou shalt hear new sport. Each to the other side his eyes averted, he first who most reluctant was to do it. The Navarrese selected well his time, planted his feet on land, and in a moment leaped and released himself from their design, whereat each one was suddenly stung with shame, but he most who was the cause of the defeat. Therefore he moved and cried, thou art overtaken. But little it availed, for wings could not outstrip the fear. The other one went under, and flying upward he his breast directed. Not otherwise the duck upon a sudden dives under when the falcon is approaching, and upward he returneth cross and weary. Infuriate at the mockery, Calcabrina, flying behind him, followed close, desirous the other should escape to have a quarrel. And when the Barator had disappeared, he turned his talons upon his companion, and grappled with him right above the moat. But sooth the other was a doughty sparhawk, to clapper call him well, and both of them fell in the middle of the boiling pond. A sudden intercessor was the heat, but nevertheless of rising there was not, to such degree had their wings blind. Lamenting with the others, Barbarossa made 4 of them fly to the other side, with all their gaffs, and very speedily. This side and that to their post descended, they stretched their hooks towards the pigeon-snared, who were already baked within the crust, and in this manner busied did we leave them. And so ends Canto 22. And again, this is not really theology, right? This is just one man with a very vivid imagination, even taking it on good faith that he was having an actual vision. I don't believe that this was a vision of actual hell. And if it is arbitrary and trite, right? This is wild. Like this descent and these punishments, they're terrible. They're horrible. But they're obviously the workings of man. God could come up with so much better things, right? To think that God created these beings simply to torment people for the rest of eternity is a little bit wild to me. It's a little bit wild to me. All right, Canto 23. Silent, alone and without company, we went, the one in front, the other after, as go the minor friars along their way. Upon the table of Aesop word was directed my thought by reason of the present quarrel, whereas he has spoken of the frog and mouse. For Mo and Isa are not more alike than this one is to that, if well we couple end and beginning with a steadfast mind. And even as one thought from another spring, so afterwards from that was born another, which the first fear within me double made. Thus did I ponder.
These on our account are laughed to scorn with injury and scoff, so great that much I think it must annoy them. If anger be engrafted on ill will, they will come after us more merciless than dog upon the leveret which he seizes. I felt my hand stand all on end already with terror, and stood backwardly intent, when said I, Master,
if thou hidest not thyself and me forthwith, of Malebranche am I in dread. We have them now behind us. I so imagine them, I already feel them. And he, if I were made out of leaded glass, thine outward image I should not attract sooner to me than I imprint the inner. Just now thy thoughts came in among my own with similar attitude and similar face, so that of both one counsel soul I made. If peradventure the right bank so slope that we to the next Bolgia can descend, we shall escape from the imagined chase. Not yet he finished rendering such opinion, when I beheld them come with outstretched wings, not far remote, with will to seize upon us. My leader on a sudden seized me up, even as a mother who by noise is wakened, and close beside her sees the enkindled flames, who takes her son and flies, and does not stop, having more care of him than of herself, so that she clothes her only with a shift. And downward from the top of the hard bank, supine he gave him to the pendant rock, that one side of the other Bolgia walls. Never ran so swiftly water through a sluice to turn the wheel of any land-built mill, when nearest to the paddles it approaches, as did my master down along that border, bearing me with him on his breast away, as his own son and not as a companion. Hardly the bed of the ravine below his feet had reached, ere they had reached the hill right over us. But he was not afraid, for the high providence which had ordained to place them ministers of the fifth mote, the power of thence departing took from all. A painted people there below we found, who went about with footsteps very slow, weeping, and in their semblance tired and vanquished. They had on mantles with the hoods down low before their eyes, and fashioned of the cut that in Cologne they for their monks are made. Without they are gilded, are so that it dazzles, but inwardly all leaden and so heavy that Frederick used to put them on of straw, of everlasting fatiguing mantle. Again we turned us, still to the left hand, along with them, intent on their sad plaint. But owing to the weight, that weary folk came on so tardily that we were new in company at each motion of the haunch. Whence I unto my leader, see thou find someone who may by deed or name be known, and thus in going move thine eye about. And one who understood the Tuscan speech cried to us from behind, Stay ye your feet, ye who run so athwart the dusky air. Perhaps thou wilt have from me what thou demandest. Whereat the leader turned to him and said, Wait, and then according to his pace proceed. I stopped, and too beheld I show great haste of spirit in their faces to be with me, but the burden and the narrow way delayed them. When they came up, long with an eye askance, they scanned me without uttering a word. Then to each other turned and said together, He, by the action of his throat, seems living, and if they dead are, by what privilege go they uncovered by the heavy stole? Then said to me Tuscan, Who to the college of miserable hypocrites art come, do not disdain to tell us who thou art. And I to them, Born was I, and grew up in the great town on the fair river of Arno, and with the body am I've always had. But who are you, in whom there trickles down along your cheeks such grief as I behold? And what pain is upon you that so sparkles? And one replied to me, These orange cloaks are made of lead so heavy that the weights cause in this way their balances to creak. Frati Guardianti were we, and Bolognese, I Catalano, and he Lodoringo, named and taken together taken by thy city, as the wont is to take one man alone, from maintenance of his peace, and we were such that still it is apparent around Gardingo. O friars, began I, you're iniquitous, but said no more, for to mine eyes there rushed one crucified with 3 stakes on the ground. When me he saw, he writhed all over, blowing into his beard with suspirations, and the friar Catalan, who noticed this, said to me, This transfixed one, whom thou seest, counseled the Pharisees that it was meet to put one man to torture for the people. Crosswise and naked is he on the path, as thou perceivest, and he needs must feel, whoever passes, first how much he weighs. And in like mode his father-in-law is punished. Within this mode and the others of the council watch for the Jews, which for the Jews was a malignant seed. And thereupon I saw Virgilius marvels over him who was extended on the cross so vilely in eternal banishment. Then he directed to the friar this voice, Be not displeased if granted thee to tell us, if to the right hand any path slope down, by which we too may issue forth from here, without constraining some of the black angels to come and extricate us from this deep. Then he made answer, Nearer than thou hopest, there is a rock, that forth from the great circle proceeds and crosses all the cruel valleys. Save that at this, 'tis broken and does not bridge it. You will be able to mount up the ruin, at sidelong slopes and at the bottom rises. The leader stood a while with his head bowed down, then said, The business badly he recounted who grapples with his hook, the sinners yonder. And the friar, many of the devil's vices. Once heard I at Bologna, and among them, that he is a liar and the father of lies. Thereat my leader with great strides went on, somewhat disturbed with anger in his looks, whence from the heavy laden I departed, after the prints of his beloved feet. And so ends 23. And we didn't get a whole lot more here either, right? There was a little bit of condemnation for the hypocrites, or these sort of people who were meant to be leading people to Christ and instead led them away through the various burdens that they placed upon them, right? That was what I got out of that. There wasn't a whole lot extra to add to that. The path's a little bit more difficult as you get down here because apparently hell is in disrepair. Seems like maybe they could put somebody to eternal damnation working on fixing the arches or something, but I guess not. All right, Canto 24, and this is where this will be the final one for today, and then we'll wrap up. So, in that part of the youthful year wherein the sun his locks beneath Aquarius tempers, and now the nights draw near to half the day, what time the hoar-frost copies on the ground the outward semblance of her sister, white, but little lasts the tempo of her pen. The husbandman, whose forage faileth him, rises and looks, and seeth the champaign, all gleaming white, whereat he beats his flank, returns indoors and up and down laments, like a poor wretch who knows not what to do. Then he returns, and hope revives again, seeing the world has changed its countenance in a little time, and takes his shepherd's crook, and forth the little lambs to pasture drives. Thus did the master fill me with alarm, when I beheld his forehead so disturbed, and to the ailment came as soon the plaster. For as we came unto the ruined bridge, the leader turned to me with that sweet look which at the mountain's foot I first beheld. With arms he opened after some advisement, within himself elected, looking first well at the ruin, and laid hold of me. And even as he who acts and meditates, for I it seems that he provides beforehand. So upward lifting me towards the summit of a huge rock, he scanned another crag, saying, to that one grapple afterwards, but try first if 'tis such that it will hold thee. This was no way for one clothed with a cloak, for hardly he light and I pushed upward, we able to ascend from jag to jag. And had it not been, upon that precinct shorter was the ascent than the other. He I know not, but I had been dead beat. But because Malibojé towards the mouth of the profundest well is all inclining, the structure of each valley doth import that one bank rises and the other sinks. Still we arrived at length upon the point, wherefrom the last stone breaks itself asunder. The breath was from my lungs so milked away when I was up that I could go no further. Nay, I sat down upon my first arrival. Now it behooves thee thus to put off sloth, my master said, for sitting down upon or under quilt one cometh not to fame, withouten which whoso his life consumes, such vestige leaveth on himself on earth, as smoke in air or in the water foam. And therefore raise thee up. Overcome the anguish with spirit that overcometh every battle, if with its heavy body it sink not. A longer stairway it behooves thee mount. 'Tis not enough from these to have departed. Let it avail thee, if thou understand me. Then I uprose, showing myself provided, better with breath than I did feel myself, and said, Go on, for I am strong and bold. Upwards we took our way along the crag, which jagged was, and narrow and difficult, and more precipitous far than that before. Speaking I went, not to appear exhausted, whereat a voice from the next moat came forth, not well adapted to articulate words. I know not what it said, though o'er the back I now was of the arch that passes there, but he seemed moved to anger who was speaking. I bent downward, but my living eyes could not attain the bottom, for the dark, wherefore I, Master, see that thou arrive at the next round, and let us descend the wall. For as from hence I hear and understand not, So I looked down, and nothing I distinguish. Other response, he said, I make thee not, except the doing, for the modest asking, ought to be followed by the deed in silence. We from the bridge descended at its head, where it connects itself with the eighth bank, and then was manifest to me the Bolgia, and I beheld therein a terrible throng of serpents, and of such a monstrous kind that the remembrance still congeals my blood. Let Libya boast no longer with her sand, for of Chelidry, Jacali, and Pherae she breeds with Conchiri and with Amphibis Bania. Neither so many plagues nor so malignant ever showed she with all Ethiopia, nor with whatever on the Red Sea is. Among this cruel and most dismal throng, people were running naked and affrighted, without the hope of hole or heliotrope. They had their hands with serpents bound behind them. These riveted upon the reins the tail and head, and were in front of them entwined. And lo, at one who was upon our side, there darted forth a serpent, which transfixed him, there where the neck is knotted to the shoulders. Nor so quickly ever, nor I was ridden, as he took fire and burned, and ashes wholly behooved that in falling he became. And when he on the ground was thus destroyed, the ashes drew together, and of themselves into himself they instantly returned. Even thus by the great sages 'tis confessed, the phoenix dies, and then is born again, when it approaches its 500th year. On herb or grain it feeds not its life, but only on tears of incense and ammonum, and nard and myrrh are its last winding sheet. And as he is who falls and knows not how, by force of demons who to earth down drag him, and other oblation that binds man, when he arises and around him looks, wholly bewildered by the mighty anguish which he has suffered, and in looking sighs. Such was that sinner after he had risen. Justice of God, oh how severe it is, that blows like these in vengeance poureth down. The guide thereafter asked him who he was, whence he replied, I reigned from Tuscany, a short time since into this cruel gorge. A bestial life, and not a human, pleased me. And not a human pleased me, even as the mule I was. I'm Vanni Fucci, beast, and Pistoia was my worthy den. And I unto the guide, tell him to stir not, and ask what crime has thrust him here below, for once a man of blood and wrath I saw him. And the sinner who had heard dissembled not, but unto me directed mind and face, and with a melancholy shame was painted. Then said, it pains me more that thou hast caught me amid this misery where thou seest me, than when I from the other life was taken. What thou demandest I cannot deny. So low am I put down because I robbed the sacristy of the fair ornaments, and falsely once 'twas laid upon another, but that thou mayest not such a sight enjoy, if thou shalt ever be out of the dark places. Thine ears to my announcement open here. Pistia first of Negri groweth meager, then Florence doth renew her men and manners. Mars draws a vapor up from Val de Magra, which is with turbid clouds enveloped around, and with impetuous and bitter tempest. Over Campo Pisan shall be the battle, when it shall suddenly rend the mist asunder, so that each Bianco shall thereby be smitten. And this I've said that it may give thee pain. And so ends Canto 24, and that's where we're going to begin to wrap this up. This, again, was a lesson in history more than anything, right? It's a lesson in history more than theology, for sure, because they don't even really touch on the theology much. They touch on, here is the sin that these people are being punished for, and I believe that these people are being punished here because of this sin. There's a whole lot of that. There's a whole lot of history being recorded and being relayed to us. There's a lot of things to dig into here. There's mention of the Phoenix here, which is an interesting thing. If you were unaware of Jason Brashears over at Archaics, he's got a lot of great information. I believe that he interprets it wrong, that he has the wrong keys, like he doesn't even understand what 138 means, and that's a problem for him. But Overall, he's out there giving fairly decent information. And he talks about the Phoenix event, which happens every so often. But this references it at 500 years, which is an interesting number in and of itself. I do believe that there is a recurring pattern of things, right? We talked about that often. There is a 1200 year disaster or 12,000 year disaster cycle. And if you don't know what that means, you should definitely check that out. It is repeatable, trackable. The big cycles happen every 6,000 year, and it repeats on a 12,000 year, right? We get a hot and we get a cold cycle. We get a wet one and we get a dry one. The wet one happened roughly 6,000 years ago. Roughly 6,000 years before that, we had a hot one, which remade the face of the planet. The cold one just floods everything. The hot one makes things look differently. We get new mountain ranges. We get new directions. Right, north will become east or west, or I'm not quite sure where you are and how it exactly will change, but the very stars themselves will shake and tremble in the sky. Things will turn and twist and will not be recognizable. Orion will lay on his side and it will once again align correctly with the pyramids. All of these things to say that there are interesting points of history inside of here that are definitely worth digging into a little bit more. I am interested in learning some more references to this Phoenix thing, so if you have them, drop them down below. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion. I understand that I hold some different views, right? There are people who take this as doctrine. I don't. There are people who think that this was biblical, and it's not, right? We went through the Bible. This is definitely not in there. But this was intended to scare people into acting correctly, right? According to these laws that I have decided that you have to follow, this is what will happen to you if you transgress. I hold some slightly different beliefs. I believe that God wants you to be the best you, that you get the option to not, but that if you listen and you are guided and you do the things that you are supposed to do, then you get the best that was intended for you. And sometimes that is going home early. It is. But most of the time it's not. Right? Most people live out a normal-ish life. Your trials and how rough that life is going to be is up to you. It is up to your decisions and the things that you do in large part. There are certain things that are bottlenecks that you have to go through, regardless of what's going to happen. You probably have enacted in that way at some point. You said something that was completely out of character and you have no idea where it came from. It just kind of spat out. Well, that was you acting at a bottleneck in someone else's life. People have done that to you. It's not as easily recognizable. I don't believe that there's eternal damnation for people. I think that God put you here to learn lessons, and if you don't learn lessons, then you have to come back and learn them again. If you choose to go home early, that was not the optimum path, but you just have to come back and do another experience, and you have to learn not to take that temptation the next time. I don't believe that you're sent to hell for that, right? You can probably create that hell for yourself. You can absolutely believe that something is real enough that when you go, that's where you go. I'm not doing that. I'm going to see where God takes me. It is my firm belief, because of the Bible study, that the only thing that was ever required to be sacrificed for your sin was your sin. That if you go to God and you say, "Dear Heavenly Father, I come to you as a sinner and I ask you to forgive my sins. I freely accept the grace that you freely extend to me, and I ask you to change my life." That if you say that, it is done. There is no extra steps necessary, and there damn sure is not lakes of fire waiting if you don't, or if you transgress after. That does not mean that your life is going to be perfect right away. It's going to get a little bit harder for a while. It is definitely harder when you start trying to do the right thing. You get tempted more. You get pushed more. You get held back more. It is not an easy path, but it is a good one to walk. It's a lot better than creating this reality for yourself. And that's where I'm going to wrap this up. If you like what I'm doing here, let me know down below. If you don't, let me know down below. Hit me with a like, share, and a sub. Throw me a comment. Let me know. If you really like what I'm doing, hit me with the super thanks. I will greatly appreciate it. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you.
God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete, just the way that you are.
And this has been Pet State. Peace.